Hello dear Motorsport-Magazin.com friends and Formula One fans. A weekend without the premier class. No problem for you, because we also provide you with entertainment and information away from the race weekends. Today we have some exciting news for you. First and foremost from Mercedes. Perhaps you've noticed that there has been a bit of a stir recently, or maybe not. In Monaco, Mercedes had a relatively extensive update for the front wing, a completely new philosophy. The nose fairing has also changed a bit, but the part was only visible on George Russell's car. Now many have said, yes of course, Lewis Hamilton will leave Mercedes at the end of the season and will then drive for Ferrari in 2025. He will now simply be put at the back. That wasn't actually the case, at least with this front wing. Lewis Hamilton chose himself not to drive this new front wing in Monaco. There was only one available. The update was actually planned for Canada. They were a bit quicker than they thought, but only with one. Mercedes decided, okay, we'll bring this one part, even if it's a bit risky with Parc Fermé and so on. In other words, if something had broken, a pit lane start would have been on the cards. But they said, okay, they want to give it a try. We want to see if it really works, but only in one car. Then Lewis Hamilton said, no problem for me. There will be more cases like this over the course of the year when a part is ready, but if there is only a single version, then we take turns. That's how it was done at Mercedes. That's why it's not a problem, at least at this point. In the race, we then heard that Lewis Hamilton was a bit unhappy with the tire strategy. Of course, it was roulette, it was a game of chance. On the other hand, he then made a pit stop. But there was obviously a little misunderstanding. A misunderstanding on the outlap could possibly have allowed him to overtake Max Verstappen if he had driven the outlap correctly. Mercedes told him to drive a normal outlap. Actually, he should have been instructed to drive outlap critical. In other words, get out of the pits as quickly as possible, accelerate as quickly as possible, and then make the undercut against Max Verstappen. We all know how it turned out. Verstappen came in a lap later and stayed well ahead. At Mercedes, they say, yes, that was our mistake. We communicated that incorrectly to Lewis Hamilton. They take the blame for it, but at the same time say that no matter what outlap Lewis Hamilton would have driven, it probably wouldn't have been enough anyway. So much for the sporting side of things. But then we are interested in the interpersonal aspects. And that's where the whole thing is highly explosive, of course. Lewis Hamilton, the king of qualifying, has already clinched 104 pole positions in his career. An absolute record in Formula One, of course. And he is 7-1 behind George Russell so far this season. What made the situation particularly explosive was a statement he made on British TV. He said, I don't expect to be ahead of George in qualifying this year. Then the question came back, not all year, and then he just laughed a bit and said, we'll see. That almost suggests a bit that Mercedes might prefer Russell to Hamilton, if you want to interpret it that way. Lewis Hamilton didn't say anything more about it, but Toto Wolff was of course asked about it. He says, we are trying to make the best of the relationship. Yes, also a bit telling, trying to make the best of the relationship. I would say that Mercedes is behaving correctly at this point. But of course, it's not easy when you know that the star driver, who is also not easy to deal with, will be leaving the team at the end of the season. Toto Wolff also says that all drivers are naturally always a little skeptical, but there are no efforts at Mercedes to favor one of them. Since Abu Dhabi 2016, or apart from Abu Dhabi 2016, Mercedes has never tried to manage a race in that way. Abu Dhabi, that was the World Championship battle between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Back then, Lewis Hamilton tried everything to take the title away from Nico Rosberg. He also drove the competition into Rosberg and vice versa. Mercedes tried to manage the whole thing, but failed in the end. Apart from that, however, says Toto Wolff, there were no efforts at Mercedes at any time. They want to provide both drivers with the best possible car, the best possible strategy, and the best possible support. Yes, but the question still arises, why isn't Lewis Hamilton doing well? They've changed the seating position for him this year, but he's still not really getting going. Last season's qualifying duel was one of the most exciting in the entire field. If you just look at the Grand Prix weekends, it was 11-11. On average, Hamilton was 3 to 5 seconds slower than Russell. Russell is also known as a super qualifier, so it's not just Hamilton who is a sensational qualifier. Russell is also known as such. That's why it was really close last year, but somehow not this year. 7-1, but it actually looks a bit clearer than it is in terms of time. Hamilton is a little more than a tenth of a second off the pace. Incidentally, Toto Wolff doesn't want to recognize a trend in this. He says it's just a statistic. We still have 17 qualifying sessions left this year. That's why everything is easy. Nevertheless, Lewis Hamilton, possibly the greatest driver in the history of Formula One, is now being questioned. Has he passed his peak? Did Ferrari even get the right driver with Hamilton? Should Carlos Sainz have been let go? This is exactly the question we asked the Ferrari fans. We were recently in Maranello and wanted to know what the fans actually think. What do they think of Lewis Hamilton at the Scuderia?
It's a great thing because it's a legend of motorsport, and I'm glad I came here because you can learn something from the engineers, something new, something about the cars from the other side of the factory.
It's very important for Ferrari because he will open up the idea of Ferrari to the world, to the fans. He might bring engineers, for example, Loic Sara, who opened yesterday. It would be very wonderful to meet him here in Maranello.
That Lewis has come here is surprising, but I'm very happy because he is 7 times world champion, and it's a respect for Lewis, for the history and for the ability of Lewis Hamilton. So I'm really curious to see how next year the magic team of Hamilton and Leclerc driving Ferrari, and we will be guests for the World Championship.
I'm happy that Lewis comes to Maranello bringing some experience and maybe some good from Mercedes-Benz and bringing them here in Ferrari, but I will always follow Charles because he is my hero.
Unfortunately, we'll have to wait a little longer for the summer weather, but that's not a problem, because EA Sports F1 24 is now available, the official game for Formula One season 2024. And I'm going to give you 4 reasons why it's not just the perfect leisure activity on rainy days. Point number 1. In close collaboration with none other than Max Verstappen, EA Sports Dynamic Handling has been introduced. This ensures that the driving experience is completely redefined. And it doesn't matter whether you're playing with the controller or the steering wheel. It simply becomes more realistic. Point number 2. The racing calendar hasn't changed much compared to last year, but the tracks in the game definitely have. Silverstone, Spa, Qatar and Jeddah in particular have been revised and are now much closer to the original. Point number 3. The biggest changes in the game were in the career mode. There is now a community voting system. It's a really cool feature because the community can vote on which tracks will be raced in future events and even what conditions will prevail. Point number 4. I think that's a really nice story. You will now hear original radio messages from the drivers in the game that they said during the race. So don't wait any longer. EA Sports F1 24 is available now for PlayStation 5, for Xbox Series X and S, and of course PC. And very importantly, also for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Back to the day-to-day business of Formula One. There have recently been some interesting statements from the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem. He gave a very interesting interview to the Reuters news agency in which he also talked about Andretti, and a quote that subsequently went around the world. Mohammed Ben Sulayem said in this interview that I would advise Andretti to buy another team and not come in as the 11th team. Has the FIA president now given up? Because it was very clear until now that the FIA wants more teams. The FIA wants Andretti to join Formula One as an additional team. However, the commercial rights holder Liberty Media and the existing teams have so far resisted. Nevertheless, Andretti is preparing, is using extreme means to prepare to enter Formula One. However, there seems to be no movement from Formula One towards Andretti. That's why some people might say, yes, Mohammed Ben Sulayem sees that it's hopeless, there's no way around it. If Formula One doesn't want an additional team, then there won't be one. So maybe Andretti should just buy one now. He also said that 1 or 2 teams might need a little refreshment because they are currently having problems. And maybe an Andretti would be better than an existing team. These statements obviously had a lot of explosive potential, but we hear that everything was taken a little bit out of context. Mohammed Ben Sulayem, he is not warming to the idea that no additional team should be allowed into Formula One. He just wanted to advise Andretti that if there is no other way at the moment and you are looking for a quick way into Formula One, then you have the option of buying a team. But I also find it interesting that the FIA president sees some potential for some teams to improve upwards or the management structure afterwards. Who comes to mind? Of course, the first team that comes to mind is the Alpine Works team, which is currently failing completely. Also in terms of team management, internal driver disputes and so on. And there have also been interesting rumors recently that Flavio Briatore could return. I don't know whether this is the refresh that the FIA president was referring to. Flavio Briatore at Alpine would of course be an absolutely crazy story. Alpine is actually Renault. Renault was actually once Benetton. Flavio Briatore started in Formula One with this team, with Benetton and then with Renault. He celebrated these huge successes, but also caused Crashgate in Singapore. So that would be a really strange commitment, especially from today's perspective of Formula One, where you can't really afford scandals anymore. If Flavio Briatore doesn't fit into modern Formula One, then he does fit into the old Formula One, and he would certainly be in good hands at the Red Bull Ring next weekend. That's where the Red Bull Ring Classics are taking place. An event at which many, many beautiful old cars drive around the track and really put the pedal to the metal. And if you want to go, good news, there are still tickets available. You can go to the Red Bull Ring during the day to see the old cars, then turn on the TV or the Motorsport-Magazin ticker in the evening and find out about the Canada Grand Prix. What awaits you at the Red Bull Ring is, among others, Dieter Quester, the Austrian racing legend. And you definitely shouldn't miss him. You always keep your finger on the pulse of the times. So I'm particularly interested in what you actually think of the automotive industry and modern cars. I think you prefer to drive older models, don't you?
Well, it's clear that I prefer to drive a comfortable, modern vehicle on the road. So I'll probably have to drive a vehicle built in 37 for the weekend, which has a very hard suspension. It doesn't have a roof, so I really hope it stays dry. But I mean, these are vehicles that you really have to pull yourself together if you want to get something nice out of them.
Yes, that's the interesting question. Now, I don't want to say that you're getting on in years, but you are, as I said, already at an advanced age. How much do you personally still push yourself to the limit when you're in a car like this?
Well, I have to say that I still have no problem getting into a racing car, stepping on the gas at the Red Bull Ring and taking a corner as fast as I can, so yes. I don't see any problems for me, even though I'm already at an advanced age.
So you have to watch out for the cars rather than yourself?
So that's smarter, because it's the case that these vehicles also represent a corresponding value. And of course the thought always comes up, just don't have an accident, which of course can always happen. But yes, it is what it is. I would be, when I'm at the ring, step on the gas, and yes.
I seem to remember the first time the Red Bull Ring was back on the calendar when there was the Legends Parade. I've heard that you always have to be the most careful not to break anything.
So I don't have to say, or I wouldn't say that I had to watch out for myself the most, but it's true to say that when the Quester accelerates, something can happen.
By the way, nice side note. Dr. Helmut Marko told us that he would rather be at the classic event at the Red Bull Ring than at the Formula One in Canada. You can find out why in the video interview with the doctor.